Oh, come on! Welcome to part 3 of my review of Capcom Arcade Stadium. You are watching the Broken Controller Club. My name is Ed, and I'm your host. So today's newest and final part of the review is of the Arcade Evolution Bundle, which covers choice Capcom games from 1992 to 2001. I'm going to go through each of these briefly and then give my final thoughts on the whole shebang afterward. If you'd like to skip ahead to stuff you're interested in or find me annoying, I've got you covered there too. Just check out the chapters on the timeline. First up is the excellent Warriors of Fate, released in 1992 and is a sequel to Dynasty Wars that I covered back in part 2. You'll play as one of 5 characters, each that play pretty differently from each other. You've got a swordsman, a few martial artists, and the archer is my favorite because he's hilarious. Like, he always shoots at ankles. I've never seen anybody shoot an arrow that travels such a short distance. Nerf arrows go farther. All the other archers shoot arrows like this also, and watching everybody shoot arrows that only travel 20 feet at each other is a sight to behold. Anyways, the levels have a lot of variety, and the bosses are interesting and generally carry like huge weapons on them, like big war hammers and stuff. One of my favorite levels was this one where there's a huge flood and you're having to go on rooftops and fight because the water's risen so high. Because it's a sequel to Dynasty Wars, you've also got access to a horse. I don't understand horses all that much, I don't know where horses come from or how they're even made, but I've seen the never-ending story enough times to know that I don't want to put mine in danger, so I left him back on the first level. Hopefully he's still alive by the time I beat it. The game's a good time and turned out to be one of my favorites on this bundle. So I'm going to cheat a little bit for the next 2 games and review them both at once, and that's because those are Street Fighter II Turbo and Super Street Fighter II Turbo, released in 1992 and 1994 respectively. Reason being is really just because there's only so much I can talk about with these, and most anybody that's buying this collection knows Street Fighter already. Street Fighter II Turbo is the second update of Street Fighter II, with Championship Edition being the one that came before this. The game runs much faster, there's some rebalancing like there is in every version, and also there's new color palettes and moves. Carried over from Championship Edition is the addition of all 4 bosses to the roster, so you can play as anybody now. A lot of players consider this to be the peak of Street Fighter II. Along with that is Super Street Fighter II Turbo, technically the 4th update to the series, and features everything that I just spoke about. The content from Super Street Fighter II, which includes 4 brand new characters and stages to the series, and also the addition of Akuma for the first time if you're good enough to challenge him. I wasn't, because quite frankly this game kicked my ass so hard that it made me wonder if playing Street Fighter V over the years has softened me up. More about that in a moment. So the new characters are T-Hawk, Fei Long, DJ, and my girl Cammy, who I saved for last because she's my favorite, and I main her on Street Fighter V. So there. The game also includes updated and additional moves for all the OG fighters, and for the first time in the series we got a super meter that would fill up and you could unleash your fighter's signature super move on your opponent. The graphics had an update as well, and that even includes the avatar picks next to the health bars, and everything just had a cleaner look to it. In my opinion, this is where Street Fighter started getting more interesting. Ryo and Ken's movesets were more focused on each character's strengths so that they felt more different to play as, and Chun-Li's Fireball got an update much closer to how it is today, and lots more. Unfortunately, for reasons that I'm never going to understand, Guile and the announcer had a voice change, and they both sound a lot more like someone who would fetch my coffee at Starbucks than by anybody whose balls dropped when they hit puberty. Anyway, both games play fine, however, I will mention that the difficulty on these are high, like much higher than I expected due to OG Street Fighter's difficulty on the last bundle being pretty forgiving. It's the difference between playing against Mrs. Controller and our cats and then challenging champions Justin Wong or Daigo, no offense to her. I even set the difficulty down to the easiest level, Game Journalist Crybaby difficulty, and even those matches were pretty close. So just go into this knowing that you're probably going to get a whooping. Or I suck. That's not out of the realm of possibility either. Next up is Power Gear, Strategic Variant Armor Equipment. Try drinking a 5th of whiskey and saying that 3 times fast. Was also released in 1994. It's basically a mech brawler with some neat twists to it. You choose from 4 different characters along with their respective armors, all very different from each other. You do the usual and beat the stuffing out of enemy robots and soldiers with the boss at the end of each level. One of the cool things about this is that you can pick up parts off enemies you take it out and replace your own parts with them. So for example, if one of these jerks grabs you and yanks your arm off, you can pick one up off of a fallen enemy, and it may or not be like the one you just lost. Same with guns and legs and all that. If that would have happened to Cody in Final Fight, he would have just bled out. And that's just nasty. Anyway, the variety in enemies and levels is great, so if you're a fan of mech-related tomfoolery, you'll probably have fun with this. 19XX, The War Against Destiny is next, and that released in 1995. I don't know when the game takes place, but at least we have the date it came out, right? Anyways, you take control of one of 3 planes, each with varying stats, and you blow up all manner of planes and tanks and aircraft carriers and more. I don't know what Capcom had against aircraft carriers, but you're going to destroy a lot of them over this entire collection. As usual, there's different types of guns to collect, and there's also smart bombs to clear the screen. This one is one of the first on the list to really feel like a bullet hell game, as there's a ton more to dodge on the screen that's coming at you. Personally, I loved it. Also, if somebody can tell me in the comments how you actually go to war against something intangible like Destiny without sounding like you took a bunch of drugs, I'm interested in hearing it. Cyberbots Fullmetal Madness is also from 1995 and takes the setting and robots from Power Gear and puts them in a one-on-one fighting game. The action is pretty standard, with each robot having a few different special moves and a super attack at their disposal, though in this game there's an actual story mode that moves things along. There are 6 pilots to choose from, and then you get to choose one of several different robots, and what's most notable to Capcom fighting game fans is that one of the pilots in this is none other than Jin from Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and 2. I'll be honest in that this game just didn't hold my attention as long as Power Gear did, but it still wasn't bad at all. I'm just honestly not that much into robots and mechs. Battle Circuit was released in 1997, and this game is just crazy. It's a brawler that has so many weird parts to it that I don't know what inspired this at all, but here it is. For starters, the playable characters are all over the place, and the only one who's remotely normal is the guy called Cyber Blue, who looks like he's trying to dress like Captain Commando. The rest of them are these bizarre aliens, and one looks like a stretchy guy, but he can do ice powers, and I think one of his moves, he summoned little mini versions of him. There's this yellow Catwoman thing with big pink hair that uses a squirrel as an attack. Also a girl that rides an ostrich that moves and acts like a ballerina. The whole thing is bizarre, and it's like someone had a list of concept art that they didn't know what to do with or throw it out, so they threw it all together and made this. I do really like the futuristic setting, and also in between levels you get to spend money you get off dead enemies to spend on special moves or extending your life bar. And why not? You can't take it with you. As you can guess, there's a lot of variety in the levels as well, like a hover sled thing level, kind of reminded me of Battletoads a little bit. And there's a beach where you beat on some woman who has a gang of jellyfish helping her. Now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm surprised it's not a Nintendo game. Giga Wing is an awesome top-down shooter that came out in 1999 and lets you choose one of 4 pilots to destroy a medallion that has great power. There's bullets flying at you from every angle, and you can activate a shield that reflects them momentarily and will turn them into gold things that you can collect to up your score. And you can also blow up other planes and ships, and they'll drop tons of gold. There's a lot of gold in this game. It's like Mr. T was a consultant on it. This is also a shooter that offers multiple endings depending on how you play, which was not common at all. I never owned this game when it was released on Dreamcast, and this was a blast to play. The graphics are colorful, and there's chaos all over the screen, and it's really rewarding during those sparse moments where you can successfully navigate through a ton of bullets, and you get that 1 or 2 second breather before doing it again. This is definitely a must-play. 1944, The Loop Master came out in 2000 and is the last top-down shooter on the list. It continues the style of 19XX with the more modern bullet hell style of shooters, and also brought back the time boss fights that were in 1943. The graphics are great, and this one felt a little bit more like the original titles than the last one. You're getting the little mini planes to help you out, and you'll fly over oceans and jungles like the older titles, though you still get access to crazy amounts of firepower. And by the way, the only time I noticed any looping was when I'd use a smart bomb to clear the screen. The last one in this bundle is 2001's Progear, a really cool side-scrolling shooter that takes place in this steampunk setting. The use of older-looking planes and with the way the characters dress was a nice contrast to all the more modern-looking games that were in this collection, and the different types of tanks and mechs reminded me a lot of Metal Slug and even to a small extent Valkyria Chronicles for some reason. Anyway, you pick one of 2 planes in the beginning, and then you pick a gunner and get going. You'll blast a ton of air and land targets, power up your guns, and also use smart bombs to not only take out targets, but they also block incoming bullets if your aim is good. Something I dug about this was that if you hold the shoot button down, your guns will move up from the underneath of your plane to the front and concentrate your fire, but it also slows down your movement. Now, that sounds annoying at first, and it does leave you vulnerable, but then this also helps fine-tune your movement through hails of bullets coming at you. Also, when you die, you drop all your power-ups, and you can then pick them all right back up when you respawn, so the game really wants you to be at max power and have fun with it. I really liked this one. So what are my final thoughts on this whole collection? Whether these bundles are worth the price is going to be subjective. Personally, the Arcade Evolution bundle was my least favorite because while there's some great shooters on there and unique titles, I would just rather play Strider or Final Fight. I like the Caspo point system in this and that there's different challenges offered from Capcom that are going to change frequently over the life of the game, and that is great to see. So if you've never gotten any of these collections before, I wouldn't be afraid to get all three if you see the value there. Otherwise, if I have to make a recommendation, I'd probably just stick with Arcade Revolution and then decide on the others later on. Capcom gets a lot of credit for adding as much replayability as they have to these though. I have a big gripe though, and it is this. Where the heck is Alien vs. Predator? Or Cannon Spike? I'm guessing AVP has some sort of licensing that's probably keeping it from being released, but Cannon Spike should be an easy one to put in here. Or maybe they'll save some of these for a future bundle. I don't know. Regardless, the fact that there's so many I'd still like to see make it to the stadium proves that Capcom has an amazing back catalog, and I'm hopeful they're going to bring these back in the future. And that is it for Capcom Arcade Stadium. I hope you guys enjoyed all of these as much as I did playing them. Be sure to subscribe to get notified of more content coming up, and we're going to do this again real soon. Toodles! Congratulations! You're one of an elite few to make it to the end of the video. Reward yourself by hitting the round subscribe button in the middle, and then check out the other goodies I've got and the links next to it.